After pulling a drowning lion cub from certain death, a man suddenly found himself face to face with the cub's pride. What happened next stunned the world. The brown, churning waters of the Mara River crashed around David Thompson's chest as he battled the violent current. Clinging to his shoulders was a fragile lion cub, barely alive. Only minutes earlier, the 34-year-old photographer had been adjusting his gear on the riverbank when he witnessed a scene that would forever alter his life: a helpless cub slipping into the swollen floodwaters. David had spent nearly a decade capturing wildlife across Kenya's Masai Mara. He had always followed the golden rule: never interfere. But this moment shattered that boundary. The tiny cub, just 4 months old, had wandered too close to the edge when the muddy ground gave way beneath its paws. Its piercing cries cut through David's resolve as it was swept downstream. Without a second thought, he dropped his camera and leapt into the raging river. "I couldn't let him drown," David would later explain. Instinct replaced training. The Mara in flood season is deadly, claiming countless animals and even human lives each year. As David forced his way through the current, a hidden log smashed into his shoulder, nearly knocking him unconscious. But sheer determination drove him forward until he finally reached the panicked cub. Weak and trembling, it latched onto his neck, its tiny heart pounding wildly against his chest as he fought back toward the bank. What David didn't realize was that he wasn't alone. Concealed among the acacias, 5 lionesses had followed the cub's cries to the river. With them stood a towering male with a dark mane. As David staggered into the shallows, gasping for air, his blood ran cold. The entire pride formed a half circle, eyes locked on him and the cub he carried. Trapped waist-deep in water, David froze. He expected a swift, violent end. But the lead lioness, the pride's matriarch, stepped forward with an expression that defied all his knowledge of predator behavior. Her gaze wasn't hostile. It was searching, almost grateful. The cub whimpered softly, reaching toward its mother. The moment broke the tense silence. David's waterproof camera, still recording, captured what no scientist had ever seen before. The matriarch waded forward until she stood only a few feet away. David braced himself, but instead of attacking, the lioness bowed her head. Slowly, she leaned close and, to his shock, began to groom him with her rough tongue, the same way she would comfort a pride member. For 30 unforgettable seconds, the wild lioness treated David not as prey, but as kin. One by one, the other lions relaxed. Even the massive male lowered himself into the grass, signaling calm. David carried the cub onto solid ground, setting it before its family. The reunion was raw and emotional. The mother nuzzling her young, the others circling in relief, the male lion gently touching the cub with his nose. David watched, drenched and breathless, overwhelmed not with fear but with awe. Wildlife biologists later confirmed the behavior was extraordinary. "Grooming is a gesture reserved for pride members," said Dr. Sarah Mbeki. "For a lioness to extend it to a human reveals an astonishing depth of recognition and gratitude." But the encounter didn't end there. When David began to step back, the matriarch released a low, unfamiliar call. At once, the pride moved into formation, 2 lines flanking David like an escort. They walked with him, guiding him safely back to his gear. At the end of the path, the matriarch pressed her forehead to his in a gesture lions reserve for their most trusted companions. "Thank you," David whispered, tears mixing with river water. Each pride member acknowledged him before retreating into the savanna. The cub was last, tilting his head and releasing a tiny mew before bounding back to his mother. The footage spread worldwide, hailed as one of the most remarkable examples of interspecies connection ever captured. Jane Goodall herself called it a living testament to the shared language of compassion. David remained in the Mara, often spotting the same pride. Each time, the matriarch greeted him with a gentle chuff, and the cub, now grown, approached without fear, sometimes resting in the shade of his vehicle. Locals began calling him Simba's brother, the man who, for one extraordinary moment, was adopted into a lion family. In the words of Dr. Mbeki, this was not simple animal instinct. It was gratitude, honor, and recognition, values we once thought belonged only to humans.